Hello, friends and alumni of Semester at Sea. My name is Peter McGraw. I sailed on the fall 1996 voyage and the fall 2000 voyage. I was on the resident staff, so I was in charge of one of the Cs there. I'm currently a professor of marketing and psychology at the University of Colorado. And as we'll talk in a little bit, I direct the Humor Research Lab, aka HURL. So, it's so easy to come up with fond memories of my time on Semester at Sea. It's easy to point to things like seeing the sunrise over the pyramids at Giza, visiting the Taj Mahal, hiking the Great Wall, and so on. I would say that my favorite memory really is the overall experience of becoming a global citizen, becoming a world traveler, and understanding the complexities of life in many cultures. So I teach MBA class for London Business School in Dubai, and many of my students are from Saudi Arabia, they're from UAE, they're from Lebanon, they're from India, they're from Russia, they're from Africa, and it's really quite a diverse group. And what's really fascinating about that group of students is how easily we get along. That is where we share that global citizen perspective. And that's something that Semester at Sea really helped me kickstart. To that point, I grew up a fairly provincial kid in southern New Jersey. I had moved to Santa Barbara, California, and prior to 1996, my only international travel was a trip to Tijuana. And so you can imagine how life-changing the experience was for me, as I'm sure it was for you. So I want to take just a little bit of your time and talk about a new project that was recently released as a book called Shtick to Business: What the Masters of Comedy Can Teach You About Breaking Rules, Being Fearless, and Building a Serious Career. And so I'm going to share with you a few lessons from that book, but let me just take a few moments to tell you how I got there. So during fall 2000, I was a PhD student at Ohio State University. I was studying what is now commonly referred to as behavioral economics. So I was studying essentially how people's emotions affect their decisions and how their decisions affect their emotions. Over the course of my career, I've studied things like whether people can feel happy and sad at the same time, how do people's emotions affect the way they spend money, for example, how they save money, even looking at things like why does the TSA suck so badly. About 12 years ago now, I stumbled on this question of what makes things funny. And I've since then been answering that question and looking at implications for living a more humorous life. One of the things that has been a really great pleasure as a result of that has been the need for me to leave the laboratory. So I have a lab called the Humor Research Lab, aka HURL, and while you need experimentation to answer this very puzzling question of what makes things funny, you also need to go out into the world, sort of Indiana Jones style, and check that out. And so I ended up in the early 2000s connecting with not in early 2000, in around 2010, connecting with a journalist, and we went on what we called our Humor Code adventure, which ended up becoming my first book. And so we clowned with Patch Adams in the Amazon jungle. We visited the set of a comedy game show in Japan to figure out what goes on behind the scenes with these crazy comedy game shows that the Japanese love so much. We even crossed over the border from Israel to Palestine to look at humor where you would least expect it. And so it was a life-changing, profession-changing, global crisscrossing adventure that turned into my first book. And the short answer of what makes things funny is what I call benign violations, things that are wrong yet okay, things that are threatening yet safe, things that don't make sense yet make sense. And so when you look at humor, this benign violation perspective really solves a lot of puzzles. For example, it helps explain the two ways that a humor attempt, a joke, can fail. That is, it can be too benign, that is, there's nothing wrong, it's boring, or it could be too much of a violation, there's nothing okay about it. And in that case, you get people who are really upset and outraged by it. It explains, for example, why the very same joke can make some people laugh, some people yawn, and other people will be outraged. And that is because what's wrong and what's okay, what's a benign violation, depends almost wholly on the audience's perspective. That is, their values, their culture, the context, whether they're in a comedy club or a church, and of course, the number of drinks that they've had. So this work has been tremendously satisfying. I've been publishing it in very boring, dry, esoteric academic journals, but it's made its way out into the real world. I've done a TEDx talk. Obviously, I have written extensively about it, and it crops up every so often. For example, I've been getting a lot of calls from journalists these days asking about humor in the time of Corona. That is it okay to make jokes about these very difficult times that we're in? My standard answer to this is, by all means, as long as there's a certain amount of sensitivity built around those jokes. That is, who is the victim? Who is the target of the joke? Is this a joke that's designed to unite us or a joke to divide us? Now, of course, rather than making your own jokes, one of the better places to do is to lean on the professionals, lean on the masters of comedy. And as you know, there is no shortage of stand-up specials on Netflix, for example, as well as a huge library of very funny comedy movies and TV shows. Then we need a little bit of levity while we're sheltered in place, while we're struggling with these moments. My most recent book, though, goes beyond this idea of being funny, and it's built on a premise that, for most of us, our professional problems are not going to be solved by improving our sense of humor, but rather that we can learn from the masters of comedy. That is, we can learn to think differently. We can think funny, and because these folks have such a challenging job, an incredibly difficult job, which is to create laughs on command, that we can learn from their practices and perspectives in order to be more creative, to be more successful, and to try to make our way in these challenging economic times. So let me give you 3 brief examples of lessons from the book. So the first one is from the first chapter in the book called Reverse It. So the reversal is Comedy 101. It's one of the first things that if you don't already know it as a comedian, you learn it as a comedian. And reversals can serve as the punchline to a joke or as a premise to a sketch or comedy movie. So, for example, Henny Youngman, the king of the one-liners, has a joke that says that when I read about the dangers of drinking, so the reversal, the punchline is, I stopped reading. So reversals show up, as I said, in the premises for sketch and movies. For example, the movie Trading Places with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy is a reversal. So Dan Aykroyd, who plays this wealthy banker, and Eddie Murphy plays this street hustler, actually trade places. You have a reversal, and it serves as a comedic premise for the entire film. Well, thinking in reverse is super useful for business. For example, for many, many years, the way to sell diet and fitness products was to promise how easy it is to get in shape, how easy it is to lose weight. And as a result, you get these ridiculous products like toning shoes or the shake weight, stuff like that. Things that don't work. Well, Tony Horton, the creator of P90X, engaged in a reversal in order to be successful. That is, he never claimed that P90X would be easy. Actually, claimed that it would be insanely difficult. These were workout videos in which we were working out 6 days a week, up to 90 minutes. Had exercises like the ab ripper. Right? This was incredibly challenging, but yet the reversal worked. So P90X was at the time the most counterfeited DVD in the world. Basically, people were ripping how to get ripped. P90X became worth about $200 million for the parent company, Beachbody. Well, I think that thinking in reverse is a very useful thing for business. Right? It's a way to escape the competition, for example. When everybody's doing X, if you head in the opposite direction, that can be valuable. Now, for a time of corona, for example, how is thinking in reverse going to be useful? Well, I think that the most obvious place that it can be useful is that there are a lot of bad things happening right now. And so what I invite you to do, this is not for comedic purposes, but for actual problem-solving purposes, is that whenever you come across a piece of bad news or a piece of difficulty, the tendency is to want to say, this is bad. I invite you to find a way to say how it can be good. So for example, the idea behind having to be sheltered in place. Parts of the country are starting to loosen up now, but other places are still being sheltered in place. What are the opportunities that can come from this? Right? This might be the last time that something like this happens, let's hope. And so what are the potential benefits of doing this? Is it a time to spend more time with family, to be more focused on home projects? Are there particular threats to your career? It's very easy to judge those as bad. What are the good that come of this? Perhaps this is the kick in the butt that you need to make that career change that you've been contemplating but too scared to do. So another lesson is, it actually comes from one of my favorite chapters in the book called Write It or Regret It. And so most business books don't really tackle the topic of writing. Stick to Business does so. Actually, one of my early readers sent me a text, and she said that she's read at least 100, maybe 200 business books, and never has one talked about writing. And the reason I chose to write about writing is that for most comics, improvisers excluded, the writing process is incredibly important. That is, it serves as the foundation, obviously, for things like sketch and television and film, but it even serves as the foundation for stand-up comedy. Almost every joke that a stand-up tells on stage comes from a writing process of some sort. And the first step in that writing process is to record your ideas. That is, that the notebook, not the microphone, is the important tool in a comic's toolbox. And so one of the things that I invite you to consider doing if you don't have a writing process is to start one. And that might just be as simple as, here it is, this. Starting with a little notepad. And that might be something as simple as doing a little gratitude journaling every day. But I think it's really important to be recording one's ideas, observations, thoughts, and feelings, and ideally doing it on a daily basis. So when I started writing the book, I actually started my own journaling process, and I wish now that I had started it when I was 15 years old, because of how helpful it is for me to record what's happening and to be able to revisit those things. And during this extraordinary time, it will be interesting to look back on the things that you were thinking and feeling, and being able to see them in your own handwriting. The other value of writing is to clarify ideas, whether it be thinking about a new project, thinking about a major change in life. Writing requires a level of clarity, a level of precision that's necessary that you don't get the same level of with your own thoughts. And so anything that you're contemplating doing that seems to be rather big is worth writing down. Now, one of the things that I really like is the one pager or the one sheet. So almost actually any big project that I work on, whether it be working on this book, launching a new podcast, which I've done recently, I write a one pager. And if you go to petermcgraw.org, you can download a free workbook where you can see some of those one pagers. You can see some examples of those, as well as some other exercises associated with the book. But the act of writing requires a level of clarification, a level of precision that's really necessary, especially for any big decision that you're going through. And then obviously that one pager moves from being a place where you clarify your ideas to a place that you can communicate your ideas. That is, you can give it to someone else and say, what do you think of my new business? What do you think of this change? What do you think of this project? And so the one pager can turn from a clarifying tool into a communication tool. And then the last lesson I actually am going to pull out of the epilogue. So in the book I have what I call the case against comedians. And so I highlight some of the things that comedians do that you don't want to do, that I don't want to do. And one of them is that unfortunately they don't often take good enough care of their health. So at the end of the semester I always ask my MBA students, is your health really number one? And I think one of the things that we tend to find is that especially among ambitious people, there's a tendency to kind of cut corners, whether it be exercising, eating, sleeping, and so on, in order to get stuff done. There's just not enough hours in the day. Now, what I want to do is to suggest that that's not the place to be cutting corners. That as demonstrated by the pandemic, the real heroes are our immune systems. That's the thing that's going to keep us on the right side of this. And so my last request of you to contemplate, besides learning to think in reverse and learning to write in order to record, clarify, and communicate your ideas, is how can you make your health more of a priority? Especially when it may be difficult to exercise and it may be difficult to regulate your eating and so on. And so I always talk about the tripod, these sort of three paths to being healthy. The first one is getting good quality sleep, and to be assessing, are you getting enough sleep? Right? What's getting in the way of your sleep? Obviously, anxieties are a common thing. Do you have good sleep hygiene? Is the temperature in your room correct? Is it dark enough? Is it comfortable enough? Do you have a regular schedule that you're going to bed at the same time and getting up at the same time every day? But really looking at taking a look at your sleep, and if necessary, taking a little nap in the middle of the afternoon, taking that little 25-minute nap to get some of the cognitive and emotional benefits without what's called sleep inertia, without feeling groggy. The next one is exercise and the value of exercise, for not only to have a strong body and immune system, but also to help foster positive emotions, to help you be more creative, to help you be more resilient in this way. And I mean, obviously the most important thing is to be walking, right? So one of the things that I think we're doing too much of these days is sitting. There's a lot of sitting around that's happening. And so I encourage you to have a daily walk. I'm currently on a sabbatical. For my sabbatical, I'm out in the Joshua Tree Desert. I'm doing a nightly walk, oftentimes without electronics, just where I have a chance to get some fresh air and to get a chance to think. Obviously, going beyond walking, anything that's going to help you build muscle, build some cardiovascular endurance, those things matter a lot. And this might just be a matter of doing push-ups and air squats, in a free space in your house, but wherever possible, trying to get outside. That seems to be super, super important these days, and the research is starting to show the benefits of that, and also how little risk there is with regard to transmission, thankfully, when it comes to outside. And then the last one is eating right. So in order to fuel a healthy mind and a healthy body, how is it that you are trying to eat more fruits and vegetables, trying to stay away from sugar and processed food, eating a variety of foods, things that are wholesome and healthy in reasonable amounts, and not eating too late at night, which, as we know, can be a problem as we're bored and stressed as the day tends to wind down. And so I ask you this question: is your health really number one? And if the answer to that question is no, how can you move it to be your number one priority and to able to serve as a foundation for not only for you to be able to obviously battle sickness, but also to give you the kind of energy and positivity that's necessary to be not only good at your work, but also a good friend, a good family member, a good parent, a good brother, a good sister, a good son or daughter in these really troubling, tumultuous times. Well, I'm super pleased to be asked to do this by Semester at Sea. I'm flattered that you've perhaps stuck around to the very end. I invite you to connect with me at petermcgraw.org. I've got 2 different podcasts there, one called I'm Not Joking that looks at the lives of funny people, another one called Solo, The Single Person's Guide to a Remarkable Life. You can find my books on Amazon. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Peter McGraw. I'm also on LinkedIn. Don't do much on Facebook, though. In any case, I wish you the best. Just preparing for this has brought back so many fond memories of Semester at Sea. I'm incredibly grateful for those life-changing experiences. Thank you for not being too distracted by my stupid headphones. And I wish you the best. Take care, be well, and cheers.